just a few words. We both work for Linagora, and we work on a lot of open source software linked to the LDAP protocol. Okay, so LDAP synchronization connector, LemonLDAP, LDAP toolbox, OpenLDAP. If you hear the LDAP word, it's us. Okay, thank you. Very quick, simple presentation of LemonLDAP. So it's an old software, 10 years ago. It was made, and we just released 1.4 version this summer. What is single sign-on? It's very easy. You need to access to a web application, and you are first redirected to an authentication portal, and it gives you a cookie, and with that cookie you can access without authentication to the web application. Okay, what is interesting here is that if you have a second web application, you will be able to access to this second application with the same cookie. Okay, so you do a single authentication at the beginning, and then you access to all applications. So LemonLDAP is a software which implements this. And we also do access control, which means before you access to the web application, we can control if you have the right to access this application. So in LemonLDAP, we have a session, and we will gather your information, and depending on this information, we have access rules, and we can say, okay, you're authorized to access this application or this page, or you're not authorized. So LemonLDAP provides all of this. We have 4 components. What you see in LemonLDAP is a portal, and then you have the manager, which is the configuration interface, and the handler, which is the access agent inside Apache. And of course, we support a lot of authentication backends. So you can authenticate through LDAP, of course, but you can see here a lot of other backends like Twitter, like CAS, Radius, OpenID, etc. Self-service, you can use LemonLDAP as self-service, for example, to allow users to change their password. You can also allow users to reset their password if they lost their password. So it can be a really interesting to avoid your users to call the support team. And which is very important in LemonLDAP, we support a lot of open standards like CAS, OpenID, and SAML. SAML is, we will talk about it this morning in the roundtable. It's here to do identity federation. And we are now working on the OAuth protocol with OpenID Connect. We think we will soon support it in LemonLDAP NG. So I will give the talk to David, which will present you some new features of the last version.
Thank you, Clement. So the moment you are all expecting, the new features, of course. So the first one is the Bootstrap Skin. So Bootstrap, for those who don't know yet, it's a very known HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework for designing web applications, and especially mobile applications. So the main goal is to have application which auto-adapt to mobile contents. So you have just an example here. The first one on the left, it's the portal application which auto-adapts on a standard desktop PC. And on the right, you have a mobile interface. And it represents the auto-register page. And justly, the auto-register page is a new feature also. So self-register page permits you to auto-register your account in a referential. As you can see, there are 3 main steps. The first one is just data input. The second one is that you validate your account by email. And the third one is just the obtention of credential. You could ask what are the referentials supported. Basically, there are two kinds of them. The LDAP backends, including Active Directory, if you ever consider Active Directory as the LDAP backend, and the databases, all the databases, so MySQL, Postgre, etc. Now, another feature is the use of Moose. So before talking about Moose, I will speak about Moose with double O, Moose. Moose is an extension of the Perl object system, and there are many benefits of using it. I've just listed some of them. The first one is that it is easier to use. It is less consistent also. It is less tedious to write code with this. And finally, you can also use metaclass programming. So metaclass, to summarize, it's the fact that an instance of a class is a class, as in Inception, you know. So we don't use Moose, but we use Moose with OU. So Moose, enemy of the cat, is compatible with Moose, the animal with antlers, you know. It's fully compatible. There are some advantages to use Moose and not only Moose. The first one and the most important is that Moose has no compile time penalty at startup. It's a very interesting one. The second one is it's lighter in general, and so that's quite enough. So as you can see, there are 4 main components in which we use Moose. The advantage of using it is that in all of these modules you have a writing of attributes which is much readable, so you can maintain and read the code mod easily. Okay, so you have configuration attributes, you have session. We have rewritten partially the handler in Moose, only when it is necessary, and the captcha. By the way, the captcha is now usable in cluster mode because all the settings, all the user settings are now stored into the user session. So another issue, it's a session identifiers. So it's a security issue. The fact is that we use MD5 hatches, which are now considered as insecure. Why is it insecure? Because of 2 things. The first one is that it produces 128-bit hashes, which is much too short today. For example, you can have rainbow table attacks. And the second one is that you can make also collision hash attacks. So now we can use SHA 256-bit hashes, and as you can see, it's 2 times longer than MD5. So it's considered as secure today. Another feature, SAML identity provider initiated. So before that, you have to go to the service provider, then you are redirected to the identity provider, and you have to log in, and then you can come back on the service provider. Now you can use the identity provider initiated connection. So it's quite simple. You just have a SAML unsolicited response, which is sent by the identity provider to the service provider. So you can begin the workflow directly from the identity provider. And to make this possible, you just have to specify 2 things. The first one is the fact that this is an identity provider initiated connection. And the second one is just that you have to select the SP to join after that. So it's simply, as you can see, there are only 2 get parameters to make this work. Last feature is the Nginx support. The problem is that today the Nginx Perl API is much too young to support fully LemonLDAP NG. So we have made the decision to make a LUA Handler. It's about 500 line of code, and it supports basically the basic features. So application protection through the reading of configuration with SOAP messages, the access rules which are get from the portal, from a PL portal, the fact that you can get the exported headers and you can send them to the application. And finally, you also get the possibility to use a cache configuration and a session caches, which are essential for such an application. There is still a work in progress here to make the handler more generic, more modular, to make it work one day with a future Perl API for Nginx. So to conclude, LemonLDAP NG has, as you can see, many new features, new amazing features, and I think this is the proof of an active community. So why don't you just join us too? So if you want to stay tuned, just go to the website, the IRC, the mailing list, the Twitter, or the OLO statistics, if you want to watch a project evolution. So thank you for, we would just like to thank the OW2 staff, Linagora and LemonLDAP NG team for making all this possible. If you have some questions? No?